And figure the Michelle's
I was just hoping we could call it really quickly to fix. I don't know because I now call it HR. We're giving the wrong HR number. Not number, title. If you could actually say, instead of here, the precious bullion, whatever, can you say the coin and whatever it's really called?
Yeah, it's a mistake. So,
The new one? You fixed it? What's it? Good catch, Sharon. And I'm going to deal with it for the final printing of the.
sorry. All right. Okay. That's fine.
And do you have the copy? No, I need to.
I've never seen it. Other committees do. Yeah, I've seen it. Somebody else has it. Makes sense. Okay. I think she should just get steps. Oh, this is where I gotta do that. What's the melt value on that watch?
Depends on the day. How you doing? How are you?
What's going on, big guy? I missed you last night. Saw London. Yeah.
We saw him on the, no, he works for you.
No, there's another guy there that was talking to Brian that went to Landon. Yes, he was.
He's an intern for,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. He seemed like a nice guy. He got Brian going.
The Subcommittee on Commerce, Trade, and Consumer Protection will now come to order. I want to extend my greetings to all who are gathered here. The Subcommittee is holding today's hearing on a bill H.R. 6149, the Coin and Precious Metal Disclosure Act. The bill, which was introduced by Mr. Weiner of New York, will cover the sale of gold bullion, collectible coins made from other precious metals, and certain coins for investment purposes. H.R. 6149 requires dealers, prior to selling these items, to make clear and conspicuous disclosures in writing and orally of all fees that consumers could incur in association with the sale of these covered items. The required disclosures will extend to the purchase price, the melt value of the covered items, and the reasonable resale price of the covered items to other dealers. Many of us have seen at least one of the television advertisements placed by Gold Line International and others that tells consumers to strongly consider purchasing precious coins in order to preserve or protect the value of consumers' investments in precious metals. One of the risks that these advertisements and commercials cite repeatedly and consistently is that the U.S. government could potentially confiscate gold bullion. This is just one example, but I think it is one of which many of you can relate. These advertisements and the reported sales practices of these dealers concerned Congressman Weiner and myself enough that we sent a letter to Gold Line asking that the company to respond to a number of questions. Today, the CEO of Gold Line is with us as one of our 6 witnesses, and we are very appreciative of our witnesses. In our letter, we asked Gold Line to reveal more to us about 1, the company's sales staff training, 2, its sales staff compensation, commission, and incentive structures, 3, the average differential in value between the sales prices of gold bullion, gold coins, and how much Gold Line will pay to purchase those items back from consumers. We also asked Gold Line to tell us the following: whether it encourages its sales staff through training or in sales discussions to refer to government confiscation of gold when they speak to consumers, whether sales staff receives different commission percentages for selling bullion than for selling collectible coins, and what is that difference. Finally, we asked Gold Line to tell us whether Gold Line is required to be licensed or is qualified in any jurisdiction to act as an investment advisor. And I want to please extend my thanks to Mr. Carter. Mr. Carter, I want to extend my thanks to you. And please inform your president and CEO for his prompt response to us in a letter that, I might add, is gold embossed, that was dated August 12, 2010. That letter was useful to me and my staff, as it better defines some of the terms and words that Gold Line uses in its existing disclosures to consumers. And I would like to request unanimous consent for the entry of both letters, mine and Mr. Weiner's letter, to Gold Line and Gold Line's response into the hearing record. I would also like to take this opportunity to request another unanimous consent, and that is for the entry of 4 more documents into the hearing record. One is a letter addressed to me from the National Consumers League dated September 21, 2010, supporting H.R. 6149. The second is a statement for the record on behalf of the Industry Council for Tangible Access, dated today, September 23rd, 2010. An additional letter from the Professional Numismatist Guild, dated September 20, 2010. And finally, a letter from the American Numismatic Association, dated September 21st, 2010, addressed to myself and to Ranking Member Whitfield. Hearing no objection, these unanimous requests will be granted. Unanimous consent requests will be granted. I'm very thankful to all of the witnesses who have agreed to share their valuable time with us in the interest of examining this bill and to making this bill a better bill. With that, I yield back the balance of my time, and now I recognize the ranking member of the subcommittee, Mr. Whitfield, for 5 minutes for the purposes of opening statement.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and today we do have a hearing on H.R. 6149, the Coin and Precious Metals Disclosure Act. I might say that after reviewing information about the gold industry, we know that under current law, certain fees and price disclosures are already required by the federal telemarketing sales rule. Now, this legislation would require many new conspicuous disclosures, including fees, markups, and reasonable resale, and the melt value of the metal. I am particularly interested in hearing testimony on why reasonable resale and melt value information would benefit a customer and whether they are reasonable for a seller to disclose. Prices for many items, including gold, can fluctuate greatly day to day, and it would be problematic if legislation required an estimate that could mislead a consumer. Moreover, it is not really clear to me why the coin and precious metals sellers, certainly in the private sector, should be singled out to disclose a resale value when it's not required of the federal government. For example, my staff went out today and purchased this from the United States Mint. It's Native American $1 coins. There's 10 of them in here. There's 25 in here. The cost of the roll is $35. But the melt value of the roll turns out to be, and the markup of the gold compared to the melt value, there's a 2,393% markup on this from the federal government. And on these, this collective set of quarters that comes from the U.S. Mint, the retail value of this is $32.95, and yet the melt value of this is only $19.20. So even the U.S. government is doing a tremendous job of marking up the price of their products as well. One other aspect of this that does bother me a little bit is I've read a number of articles in the news media about this hearing, and it is disheartening to see that certain political commentators are mentioned frequently in these articles. Glenn Beck's favorite gold company is getting hauled up to Capitol Hill for a grilling. Democrats on Capitol Hill have targeted a big advertising sponsor of Glenn Beck and other popular right-wing commentators. Congress will hold hearings Thursday about the practices of Gold Line, the precious metal dealer that is broadcast and advertises on popular conservative political personalities such as Glenn Beck, Mike Huckabee, and Fred Thompson. Now, hopefully that's not the reason we're having these hearings. But it is disheartening to see that kind of news coverage on it, that a hearing might be held simply because someone is advertising on a conservative talk show host program. But we do have some experts here today. We have people with Gold Line. We have the FTC. We have some people, consumers, who have been harmed by some of their purchases. So it's important that we have this hearing. We know that the Federal Trade Commission already does have expansive jurisdiction to tackle many consumer protection problems. And they have their priorities, and I don't really believe that this is one of their priorities, but I may be wrong. Anyway, we look forward to the testimony of all of the witnesses today, and I want to thank the chairman again for holding this hearing, for giving us an opportunity to explore this issue.
The chair now recognizes the author of the legislation, Mr. Winter of New York, for 2 minutes for the purposes of opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to hold this hearing. You know, we are here talking about a classic consumer issue that affects those people in the middle class and those struggling to make it. This is exactly what this committee was empowered to deal with, and I'm glad that we're taking up this important issue. The television gold industry is an industry, and it's led by one particular company, that has built up an industry on fear, lies, and rip-offs. Fear of the impending collapse of our economy is virtually a staple of every single statement from the executives of Gold Line and other companies that sell these products. They get people scared about their future. Then they quickly transition to a lie, that if you buy certain types of coins, it's a good hedge against the downturn in the economy. Mr. Whitfield just hold up some coins that he can freely buy. No scarcity whatsoever, as many as you want. Yet the only value to the coins that are being sold is their scarcity. If not that, then the small amount of gold that is in that coin. And that leads us to the ripoff. Once people have been convinced by their fear and the lies to purchase these products, they are profoundly ripped off. They're buying products that it would take years, if not a generation, if ever, they'd make any money back on, almost irrespective of how high the marketplace rose. They're finding themselves being sold a product that is supposed to hedge against the collapse of the dollar, when in fact you would have to see years of continuing increases in gold prices and in order to be able to make up your losses. I didn't make up this data. This is freely accessible to people. They can go take a look. The exact same products that are being sold by Gold Line, the exact same products being sold by Gold Line are being sold for a fraction of the price on the open market. But let me tell you what this hearing is not about. It's not about whether you should buy gold. Some people say yes, some people say no. It's not about whether or not Glenn Beck is doing a disservice to his viewers by shilling for this company. That's his problem. That's Fox News' problem. They made a right decision by telling him that he had to end his contractual obligation and be a spokesman for this company. This is what is the right and wrong way for consumers to do it, and should they be protected? Should middle-class Americans who are being exploited every single day by this company and this industry be stopped and protected by legislation? And that's what I hope we get to today.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Scalise, for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I look forward to today's hearing and hearing from the witnesses, but it just seems rather odd that when we're sitting here and the country is asking Congress to be focusing on creating jobs when unemployment is almost 10%. You can see here from when President Obama took office to today, we're almost hovering at 10% unemployment. American people want us to be focusing on jobs. They want us to be focusing on controlling spending. And so when you look at what's happening and why people across the country are so concerned about the direction of our country, a lot of people are going out and looking for other things to do. They're sitting on their money. They don't want to invest in the things that government has control over, so people have been buying gold. Now you can see right here, this is a chart of the 5-year gold average over the last few years. When President Obama took office, you can see a trajectory going up. Now I don't think there's any TV host that had anything to do with controlling the price of gold Yet people are buying gold because they're scared to death about the spending that's going on in Washington. If you look, Moody's, the rating agency, Moody's is talking about downgrading the United States' debt rating. This is serious business. And it's because of the out-of-control spending in Washington. It's because of these policies like a government takeover of health care by the liberals running this Congress that people are so scared to death about what's happening in the country that they're buying gold. And so what is the answer of the liberals running Congress? It's to go beat up on the people selling gold instead of fixing the problems that are happening in our country, instead of addressing the problems with creating jobs, addressing the problems with out-of-control spending. And so if you look at what's going on and why we're at a point now where we're looking at this legislation, it doesn't do anything to solve some problem that's out there. The FTC can address a problem. It has to do with politics. In fact, here is a letter from a sitting member of Congress. It's nobody in this room, but it's a sitting member of Congress who wrote a letter trying to raise money off of this issue, specifically mentioning the author of this bill in an attempt to raise money for campaign purposes. So yeah, there's politics going on here, but if we really were focused on the things the American people want us to be focused on, we'd be concerned why so many people are buying gold since the day President Obama took office. It's because of the out-of-control spending and because of all these government takeovers and all of the problems that are leading to higher unemployment. We ought to be focused on creating jobs. We ought to control the spending in Washington, not beating up on the people selling gold to people who want to buy it. Thanks, and I yield back.
The chair now recognizes the chairman of the full committee, Mr. Waxman, for 5 minutes for the purposes of opening statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm interested in the hearing today. I want to find out what people who are experts in consumer protection think about this bill, whether it's needed. We do have a Federal Trade Commission, and I'm glad they're going to be testifying. I do think that there's a very important role to protect consumers from unfair practices. But I must say, after hearing Mr. Scalise's comment, the only politics I've heard injected is all the political statements he just made. If people want to buy gold for whatever reason, that's their business. But it insists that they're buying gold because liberals are control of Congress. That seems to me a little far-fetched. People can decide they want to have a greater diversity in their portfolio. They can decide to buy gold as a hedge against inflation. People can have an interest in investing in gold for whatever reason. That's their right. And in fact, while other investments have declined in value, the price of gold has nearly doubled the past 3 years. I don't think that's because Barack Obama is President of the United States, unless that's the sales pitch that's made. I'm not aware of it. I also don't think it's appropriate to hold a hearing because this is a substance that's being advertised on Glenn Beck or Rachel Maddow or anybody else. The question is, are consumers being informed of the information that they're entitled to make the best judgment? And then, quite frankly, after people have their information, they may not still make the best judgment. A lot of people make mistakes. They don't read the information that's given to them. They don't pay attention to the whole other aspects that might be involved in investing decisions. But government can't tell people what to do. That's up to them. So I'm interested in what comes out of this hearing. I know we did have a bill that we passed out of the committee and I think out of the House dealing with the whether purchasers of precious metals could melt down or destroy a consumer's jewelry or gold before receiving an affirmative acceptance of an offer to purchase the jewelry for a specific price. But this is a different issue. This is a question of how much we need to inform consumers and whether there's a problem sufficient for us to change federal law to do that. And I thank you for the hearing, and it should be an interesting one, and I expect we'll learn a lot. Yield back my time.
The chair thanks the chairman. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Terry, for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, but I'm going to waive so I'll have more time for questions. Thank you.
The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Sarbanes, for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't need 2 minutes. I just want to thank Congressman Weiner for bringing attention to this issue and echo what Chairman Waxman said, which is it's just a matter of making sure people have good information at their fingertips, and then they can make sound judgments. And the problem here is that oftentimes the information is far away from the reality of the situation. And so we're looking forward to the testimony. We're looking forward to moving forward on this piece of legislation, and I yield back. Thank you.
The chair thanks the gentleman. The chair thanks all the members for their opening statements. Now we want to recognize our witness for the first panel, and I want to introduce him. He is a private citizen. His name is Dr. Julius A. Buzan. He lives in Lynbrook, New York, and he is going to testify regarding his experiences with this product and with this company. And so, Dr. Buzan, it's important for you to know that this committee has a standing practice that we will swear in all of the witnesses. So would you please stand and raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I want to thank you so much for taking time out from your busy schedule to be a participant in this hearing, and you are now recognized for 5 minutes for the purposes of your opening statement.
Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, just please speak up because I have a bit hearing difficulty. As was mentioned, you know, I am originally from Czechoslovakia. I've been in the United States for 31 years, and I've been living in Lynbrook in New York and have been practicing neurology for 25 years. I'm also an investor, and I have been investing in a stock market, in a mutual funds, even commodities and options for about 20 years. And however, after 9/11, I lost about 60% of my investments, maybe probably more. So I decided about 8 years ago to get out of the market. I was just having my account in Ameritrade, and I was thinking what to do with my money. At that time, it was clear that the dollar was declining, the value was losing, and I was thinking about what kind of investment I would be able to make. And around the same time, you know, you listen to the news about gold, and you listen to these advertisements and all different spokesmen which you mentioned, and you're exposed to these bombardments every day. Especially I remember Gold Line, because I didn't know anything about gold, but whatever they're saying was making sense to me. Because, you know, gold was holding its value, actually was increasing in value. So I said, if I invest in gold, maybe I can maintain the value of my dollar, you know, going forward. So I decided I like to invest in gold, but I didn't know what company to choose. However, at that time, Goldline was advertising on a daily basis. You were basically bombarded. There was no other company which I could find to invest in gold. So eventually, I decided to contact the gold by phone number, and I decided to open an account. Then eventually, I was able to transfer the money, and I was contacted by one of the salesmen from a gold line, and we decided, you know, how to invest the money. Initially, I was thinking to purchase the bullions, but I was told that bullion is not a good value to invest in because in 1930s, the government really confiscated the gold and set the prices of the bullion, and that would not be a good investment. That on the other hand, I was told that coins have a much better sell value. They're increasing in price, and that will be an excellent investment for me because I can preserve my capital. So not knowing anything about it, I eventually decided I will invest in gold coins as a representative suggested. And at that time, I didn't know actually that his decision to sell me coins was based on the commissions. It looked like if I was purchased to Bullion, he would be getting about 5% of commission. However, if I bought coins, he would get 35% of the commission. So anyhow, I bought the gold, and I was waiting for about 6 months. The gold didn't go. I got the promise that it's very likely that gold price will reach $3,000 within 1 year. However, after 6 months, I didn't see the price of gold move too much. It stayed around $1,100. So I decided, because I found another investment opportunity, that I will liquidate my holdings in gold. To my shock, when I called the representative, he mentioned that there is something called spread, which I didn't know too much about. Spread, which now I understand is a difference between selling and buying the price of the gold. And he told me, I had my initial investment, which was $140,000. He said that my investment now is worth only $83,000. So essentially it meant that, at the day when I purchased this gold, my value, he took about $60,000 in profit and left me holding a bag, $83,000. So I essentially felt robbed. Felt like a legalized robbery. And so in any case, I decided to sell gold at that time. And I believe that's my story.
And sympathetic to you for your loss of your dollars and your substantial loss to your individual retirement account, which I understand you lost as a result of your investment. And again, you have the sympathies of both myself and the other members of the subcommittee. I have a few questions that I want to ask you, and I have 5 minutes in which to ask these questions. How many transactions did you conduct with Goldline? How many transactions?
But that was just one purchase, but I bought multiple different coins for the price. But the bulk of it was in premium gold eagle. Golden Proof Eagle, I believe they call it Golden Proof Eagle, which at that time I was sold for $3,300, and I understand that the melt price of that coin was only $1,000 when I got and bought it. So, and on a market price, I think it was hyped up by about 30% or 35%. I was charged for one coin $3,300, while the melt price was only $1,000.
So am I to assume that you only spoke with one salesperson?
Only one salesman, yes.
Were you ever informed of fees that would incur in association with your transaction?
No, absolutely no discussions of any fees or any commissions or anything else.
Okay. Before contacting Goldline in July 2010, when you wanted to sell your investment, did you hear or see any disclosures about how much Goldline was marking up the Proof American Eagle coins you agreed to purchase?
No.
Or how much the spread was on those coins?
I had no information about prices of coins at that time.
After purchasing the coins, did you receive any disclosures?
No.
Thank you. And I'll now yield the ranking member 5 minutes for the purpose of questioning the witness.
Is it Dr. Bazan or?
Bazan, yes.
Bazan. Well, Dr. Bazan, thank you very much for taking time to be with us today. And I also would like to offer my apologies for the loss in your investment. I do want you to know I've lost a lot of money in investments as well, and that is something that we all deal with. I believe I heard the chairman ask you if you had received any sort of disclosure when you purchased this gold. And now it may be wrong, but it's my understanding that before this company will actually sell a gold or any product to a purchaser, that they send this out, which is called an account and a storage agreement. And on the back, it says client acknowledges that he or she has read and understands all of the terms and conditions of the account and storage agreement and shall be bound by them. And I was just reading through here, and I know that the very first thing it says here is that this is speculative, unregulated, and volatile, and that prices may rise or fall. And then it says profit can only be made if prices rise over the investment period in an amount sufficient to overcome the spread as set forth in paragraph 13. Did you receive this at all before you purchased?
I don't know if it was in this form, but of course you mentioned the storage fees. You know, I was aware of the storage fees. I mean, that my question was about the purchase fees, and those prices I didn't know nothing about.
You didn't know anything about the purchase?
Nothing about prices, but I know about the storage fees.
Okay. And how long did you actually keep the gold?
The gold was, I bought it sometimes in December of 2009 and kept it until May of 2010, okay, 6 months.
6 months. Well, I noticed that in another one of their documents, it does specifically say, it says if you are purchasing coins, bullion, or rare currency for investment purposes, they should be considered a long-term investment. We believe that rare coins and currency should be held for at least 3 to 5 years, and preferably 5 to 10 years to maximize any potential for gain. Did you see that in any of these documents, or did you consider that?
I don't think I read it, you know. However, you know, I was aware of the risk I am taking. However, I was under the impression that when I'm buying these coins, I'm buying them at the market price. So of course, I naturally assumed if the price of the gold will go down, I will lose my money. However, I didn't expect at the time of a purchase to lose $60,000 in a minute I purchased that gold.
Yes. Well, you know, I just read this legislation. I haven't read it thoroughly, and I don't know what the actual definition is for a precious metal dealer. But once again, I want to go back to the U.S. Mint, because the U.S. you can go to the U.S. Mint today, and you can buy a 2010 American Buffalo 1-ounce gold-proof coin, 1 ounce, and that's $1,560. Well, the actual price of gold today is around $1,290 per troy ounce. So buying this from the federal government, you walk out the door and you've already lost approximately $300. And so if this legislation is actually going to be going after private dealers, then I'm just wondering, are we being discriminatory if we don't do something about what the U.S. government is doing?
Well, you know, that price was $1,000. He sold me that 1 ounce for $3,300. There's a big difference between the price.
1 ounce for how much?
1 ounce. That's one coin is 1 ounce. I paid $3,300 for it.
Were you aware of the price of gold on that day in the market, 1 troy ounce of gold?
Yeah, I know those prices were $1,200. I was told that that was a numismatic value of that coin. That was additional $2,000 worth of numismatic value on that coin.
So even though you knew the price of the gold for that day, it was your understanding that the value of the coin was what you paid for it. I mean, is that what you're saying?
I assume that the $3,300 was the price of that coin on a market. So if I going to redeem it, I understand I will lose some money, yeah, and I would not be able to recover $3,300, but I didn't expect that I will lose $2,000 on that coin.
Well, like I said, we do appreciate your being here today and being willing to talk about this issue. I might say, and of course, I may be totally wrong because I'm in a rural area of this country, but I haven't had any constituent write to me about this issue. Now, that doesn't mean that there are not a lot of people maybe in the same boat you are, but thank you for being with us, and we look forward to the other testimony.
Thank you very much.
The chair recognizes now Mr. Weiner for 5 minutes for the purposes of.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to pick up on what Mr. Whitfield said, you know, Dr. Bezin, you're a perfect witness because you're not alone. You know, same exact experience led to 50 Better Business Bureau complaints, $170,000 consent order signed by this company in Missouri because they were ripping off Missouri constituents, 28 FTC complaints. They're under investigation by the LA District Attorney, the Santa Monica District Attorney. There's a class action lawsuit against them in South Carolina. ABC News just this morning reported that 3 of their high-ranking current employees were banished from selling securities because of their fraudulent activities. But you're perfect for another reason. I talked about the fear, the lies, the ripoff. Your case speaks to all 3. You called because you were fearful. And you were probably led to be fearful maybe by a document like this that Goldline puts in all of its pitch packets. It's a scary-looking executive order saying that gold can be seized at any time. Gold bullion, don't get into gold bullion because it can be seized. Now, they don't explain to you that this executive order hasn't been enforced since the 70s. It was only seized then because it was the currency backer for the dollar, which it no longer is. And they don't explain to you, well, why can't, if you want to really get frightened, they can seize your coins as well. And then you were told, oh, no, it's a better value not to be in bullion, which you called for, but for these coins. Let me explain to Mr. Whitfield and the rest of the committee how these coins operate. Semi-numismatic coins have their value derived from 2 things. One is the amount of gold in it. If you're really scared about the economy and you want to buy gold, that's the little element that you care about. There's another element, though, in fairness. It's the scarcity. Mr. Whitfield demonstrated the scarcity of these products by calling up the mint and buying some. There is no scarcity. If tomorrow the dollar goes into rapid inflation, maybe it will, maybe it won't, you'll have those coins. Good luck buying a loaf of bread with those coins. Because if you went on eBay today, you'll find that those coins are readily available for nowhere near the price it's being sold at, which brings us to the ripoff. And this is the part I want Mr. Whitfield and Mrs. Scalise to understand. This gentleman thought when he paid $3,000, he got $3,000 worth of gold. Is that a preposterous assumption? Is he a naif? Is he naive? No, that's a reasonable assumption. I'm buying gold. Here's my $3,000. Give me $3,000 worth of gold. He gave them $140,000. That moment, he lost about $80,000. That second, he was ripped off. This is not about whether or not you should buy gold, Mr. Scalise. It's not about whether or not you can buy a coin, Mr. Whitfield. You've got to understand these people are being told to buy these coins for investment purposes. If you want to buy a nice Van Gogh because it's very scarce and you think it'll still be valuable in generations to come, more power to you. But no one is saying that in these ads. None of these salesmen are saying that. They're saying it's a hedge against the downturn in the economy. They will have value. And to say that the disclosure says that there's a 30% spread value, well, you know, Dr. Bazin, that what that means for consumers is a 54% markup. It's a clever use of language, but that's really what it is.
Exactly.
Look, it is fair to say we should get a few extra dollars because we're storing it. Or we should get a few extra dollars because we have these high-quality salesmen like the ones who are investigated by the SEC. But it is simply wrong to leave our constituents, middle-class people struggling to make it, who are getting the bejesus scared out of them based on these lies, who are then taken from a bullion investment and put into a coin investment based on the out-and-out near fraud of saying that those things are going to retain value better, and then taking the exact same product and saying we're going to provide triple and quadruple what this is available for elsewhere. This is why we need improved laws. And I say to my friend, Mr. Whitfield, yes, you can open this thing and save 30%. It's right here. Does that make it less of a ripoff? Does it make it less of a ripoff? Does it mean that consumers shouldn't be protected? Did Dr. Bazin, who's an articulate, smart guy, was it so naive of him to believe that if I invest $100,000 in gold, I'm going to have $100,000 in gold? These coins, this firm, this industry is an orchestrated effort, first to scare people, then to lie to them, the coins were a better deal, and then to rip them off on those coins. That's what happened to this gentleman. That's what happened to all these people that I just listed, and that's why we need improved disclosure. And I said to Mr. Whitfield, you concluded, I haven't heard a lot of complaints. Well, here's something you might be interested to know. Do you have a non-disclosure agreement? If you complain to Gold Line and they agree to settle with you, do you know you have to sign an agreement saying you won't file a complaint with the Better Business Bureau, you won't file a complaint with Congress, you won't call Congressman Whitfield? What kind of reputable company does that? Say, we're only going to try to settle this with you, your complaint, if you don't talk about it. Well, I'm glad you're here to talk about it, so am I.
Thank you.
Then there's a vote that occurs on the floor. There are 5 votes remaining, and there are less than 5 minutes to get to the floor. So this subcommittee will have to recess for approximately 40 minutes until we conclude voting on the series of votes that are now occurring on the House floor. So I please accept our apologies for the recess, but we have to get to the floor in order to vote on these important matters that's pending on the floor. And so the subcommittee now stands in recess until 10 minutes after the last votes.
Thanks for coming. Sorry about this break. We just have these votes that.
Thank you very much for your support.
Where's Lynbrook? That's
It's on Long Island.
Long Island, yeah.
Yeah.
I look at New York like that New Yorker cartoon.
Right.
Once it ends the border of Queens, I don't know
Right,
what's
exactly.
out there. But,
Yeah, it's close. It's about 20 minutes to
I know,
Manhattan.
I'm just kidding. We'll be back soon.
You're watching the House floor, their final vote on a small business package, which will go on to the President if adopted. And we do expect the House to take up 5 more votes, including the EMT Act and the Family Health Care Accessibility Act. And earlier today, President Obama was in New York speaking to
Sunday. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, I would say the consumer protection is good. You gave me one earlier. Okay. Okay. Takes like 40 minutes to make phone calls.
I'm pretty sure she had it before I could do it all. But it used to be that Michael would handle everything out of my work taxes, so.
Sorry, this is going Rayburn. It's actually a meeting with Claudia and somebody from the paper time, so I think nothing urgent.
Too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a good Tuesday. Lots of waterworks.
Oh, really? Yeah. Oh, for waterworks or other people?
Mostly just Lisa. People. I mean, I think people have emotional weakness. It's hard not to get a little emotional. She basically cried when Carol's speech. But you also need Sarah. So nice to meet you.
On this vote, the yeas are 237, the nays are 187. The motion is adopted. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. Are they excited?
The unfinished business is the vote on the motion of the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Tanner, to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 5307 as amended, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 5307, a bill to amend the Tariff Act of 1930 to include ultralight aircraft under the definition of aircraft for purposes of the aviation smuggling provisions under that act.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill as amended? Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 5-minute vote.
the main part.
Yeah, I think you stepped out in the hall. Hey. We have
The yeas are 412, the nays are 3. For two-thirds being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Without objection, the title is amendment. The chair lays before the House the following enrolled bill.
H.R. 1454, an act to provide for the issuance of a multinational species conservation fund's semi-postal stamp.
5-minute voting will continue. The unfinished business is the vote on the motion of the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Pallone, to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 5756 as amended, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 5756, a bill to amend Title I of the Developmental Disabilities Assistance and Bill of Rights Act of 2000 to provide for grants and technical assistance to improve services rendered to children and adults with autism and their families, and to expand the number of university centers for excellence in developmental disabilities education, research, and service.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill as amended? Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 5-minute vote. Yeas are 389, the nays are 24.
Ms. Cosmas. Ms. Cosmas votes aye. Mr. Welch. Mr. Welch votes aye. Mr. Kagan. Mr. Kagan votes aye.
On this vote, the yeas are 393, the nays are 24. Two-thirds being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Without objection, the title is amended. The unfinished business is the vote on the motion of the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. H.R. 3199, as amended, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar Number 353, H.R. 3199, a bill to amend the Public Health Service Act to provide grants to state emergency medical service departments to provide for the expedited training and licensing of veterans with prior medical training and for other purposes.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill as amended? Members will record their votes by electronic device, and this will be a 5-minute vote.
So I appreciate that.
On this vote, the yes
Mr. Sherman voted aye.
On this vote, the yeas are 411, the nays.
Waters. Ms. Waters votes aye.
On this vote, the yeas are 412, the nays are 5, two-thirds being in the affirmative. The rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. The unfinished business is a vote on the motion of the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Pallone, to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 1745 as amended, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar Number 352, H.R. 1745, a bill to amend the Public Health Service Act to provide liability protections for volunteer practitioners at health centers under Section 330 of such act.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill as amended? Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 5-minute vote. Yeas are 417, the nays are 1, 2/3 being in the affirmative. The rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. The unfinished business is the vote on the motion of the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Pallone, to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 5710 as amended, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar number 358, H.R. 5710, a bill to amend and reauthorize the Controlled Substance Monitoring Program under Section 3990 of the Public Health Service Act.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill as amended? Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 5-minute vote. The yeas are 384. The nays are 32. 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Lays before the House the following enroll bill.
H.R. 5682, an act to improve the operation of certain facilities and programs of the House of Representatives and for other purposes.
Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the Chair will postpone further proceedings today on motions to suspend the rules on which a recorded vote or the yeas and nays are ordered, and on which the vote incurs objection under Clause 6 of Rule 20. Record votes on postponed questions will be taken later.
Swim bank. She's her last. She's done.
She's done. She's done like graduated or done?
Done with her 4 years of eligibility. This should be her last semester. There was one required course. She's taking it this semester. Coming back home for the rest of the year, and then probably graduate school in history in the fall. Early American. She's doing a thesis on the role of preachers in the relative spreading information. Yeah, interesting. Who knew? A whole new perspective on church and state. She'll probably want to get back.
The subcommittee will come to order again. The chair now recognizes Mr. Scalise for 5 minutes for the purpose of questioning the witness.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is it Mr. Bazan?
Yes.
What was the motivator to make you want to buy gold? What was, I think you were kind of talking about that early off, but can you give?
The main thing was to hedge against inflation. Of course, we knew that the dollar was losing its value and investment was going down. So the only way, I believe, was to protect myself was to invest in gold to hedge against inflation.
Yeah, and the value of the dollar obviously dropping. When did all this really start? When did your interest in buying gold come about?
I mean, at that time there was a lot of talk about gold, and and indeed the price of gold was going up. That was the only investment which sounded reasonable. I didn't want to trade too much, so I said, I put it in gold and keep it there, and see what happens.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously with the price, and I know I've shown the chart earlier with the price of gold, just had dramatic increases. I'm not sure exactly when.
Yeah, the
when you
problem
bought
was that when I
sold.
bought the gold, they charged me 35% on my commission, so I invested $140, and at that moment I had only $83. So that means that I will have to wait years before I can recover my losses. I was hoping that I'm buying at the market price, and he was deceived. There was no discussion about price of gold, and I was almost forced to buy coins instead of bullions, because I was told that government will confiscate the bullions, or they fix the price, and that may be useless, and the coins are only way to go because they will always increase in price, and government cannot touch them, which was a lie.
Right, but ultimately you could have bought.
Say again?
Ultimately, you did have the option to buy either one.
I bought all the coins, which was suggested by the representative.
And then how long did you hold it for?
For 6 months.
6 months. All right, thanks. You bet.
The chair don't see any other witnesses from this side. Let's see. Okay, Mr. Bazan, we certainly appreciate you taking time out from your schedule to be here with us.
Say again, please.
I said we certainly appreciate you taking the time out from your busy schedule to be here with us. And again, you have our sympathy and our sincere regrets for your experiences, and we intend to continue to take a serious look at this issue and try to resolve this issue so that we can bring your situation and the similar situation experienced by other Americans, we can bring that to a screeching halt. And so, again, thank you so very much, and we wish that you will continue to be the kind of citizen that you would be, a courageous citizen, and do all that you can for our nation. Thank you so very, very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
The chair will ask the second panel now, would you please take a seat at the witness table? Those who are on the second panel. I want to welcome all those who are at the witness desk, those who comprise the second panel for this subcommittee hearing. And before we begin, I want to introduce each and every one of the members of the second panel. Seated to my left is Ms. Lois Greisman. Is that how you pronounce it, Greisman? Ms. Greisman is the Associate Director of the Marketing Practices Division for the Bureau of Consumer Protection for the Federal Trade Commission. Next to Ms. Greisman is Mr. Charles Bell, who is the Programs Director for the Consumers Union. And seated next to Mr. Bell is Mr. Scott Carter. He is the Executive Vice President of Gold Line International. And seated next to Mr. Carter is Mr. Howard Beals. Dr. Beals is an Associate Professor at the George Washington University School of Business. Again, I want to thank each and every one of you for participating in this hearing and sacrificing your time so that this committee and this Congress can be about the people's business. It is the practice of this subcommittee to swear in witnesses. So I would ask that each of you stand, raise your right hand, and answer this question. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please let the record reflect that the witnesses have all answered in the affirmative. And now, each one of you will be recognized for 5 minutes for the purposes of an opening statement. Mrs. Grisman, we will recognize you. If you will put a mic in front of you, put it closer to you and turn it on. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Rush, Ranking Member Whitfield, and members of the committee. I am Lois Greisman, Associate Director in the Bureau of Consumer Protection at the Federal Trade Commission. I appreciate the opportunity to testify before you today about consumer protection issues arising from the sale of coins and precious metals as investments. As you know, the Federal Trade Commission's written testimony has been provided. My own statement and any responses to questions you may have solely represent my own views. With the downturn of the American economy, the Commission has committed substantial resources to shut down scams that harm financially distressed consumers, with a particular focus on job and business opportunity scams, foreclosure rescue scams, scams preying upon the economic stimulus package, and scams targeting those seeking health insurance. With the economic downturn, we also see scams focusing more directly on investment opportunities as people seek low-risk, high-yield investments. And not surprisingly, coins and precious metals often are promoted as such good, safe investments. We are well aware of consumer complaints involving precious metals and coins of investments and are looking closely into some of the issues raised. And as always, we're consulting with our colleagues at the state and federal level, in particular the SEC and the CFTC. While I cannot address whether we are or are not looking at any particular area or entity, I do want to highlight some of the problems we've seen thus far and then turn to the new consumer educational materials we're issuing today. Now, although the written testimony notes that the volume of complaints received by the Commission is quite low, both for coins and precious metal, there are 3 main categories of complaints. First, complaints that some dealers use high-pressure sales tactics to persuade consumers to purchase collectible or historic coins rather than bullion coins, and that they also may misrepresent the value of those collectible coin investments. Second, there are complaints that some unscrupulous marketers urge fast investment in a particular metal before the price skyrockets. In fact, consumers end up entering into risky and high-leveraged investments. Finally, as you are well aware from prior testimony on the Guarantee of a Legitimate Deal Act, we've seen complaints about companies that purchase consumers' jewelry and family heirlooms for their melt value, but fail to provide a price quote before actually melting those items. Now, the Commission takes investment fraud very seriously. The fact that we've not brought any law enforcement action in recent years is not to be taken as an absence of concern in the area of precious metals and coins. To the contrary, the revamped consumer educational materials, and I believe each office has been provided them, entitled Investing in Gold, What's the Rush?, highlights the Commission's concern with ensuring that consumers understand the differences among investments in gold coins, bullion coins, and collectible or historic coins. In fact, the consumer ed materials consist of 3 discrete brochures. As each of these brochures make clear, these kinds of investments require a level of sophistication that one can acquire only by serious research. You have to know what you are buying and whether you are buying it as a collectible item or for the value of the precious metal itself. We hope these brochures will provide a solid starting point for consumers. Finally, I do want to touch upon the Coin and Precious Metal Disclosure Act. This act would address many of the consumer protection concerns that we have mentioned by requiring coin and precious metal dealers to disclose not only the purchase price, but also other fees associated with the sale of the coins and precious metals, as well as the melt value and reasonable resale value for coins and precious metals. Critically, I note that our revised consumer ed materials do suggest that the consumer asks for information on the melt value of a coin before making any purchase. Now, as the testimony notes, we do have some concerns with respect to the proposed definition of the term reasonable resale value in Section 1 of the bill, and we'd be pleased to continue to work with staff to address those concerns. Also, as noted in the testimony, we do not support the exemption at Section 6 because it would exclude from the bill's coverage certain collectible coins that have been the subject of consumer complaints. With that, I thank you very much for the opportunity to address the subcommittee. I look forward to working with you and to answering your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bell, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman Rush, members of the committee, thank you so much for the invitation to testify here today on ways to protect consumers who purchase gold coins and metal bullion. We commend you for holding this hearing to focus attention on ways to protect consumers and encourage a safer marketplace. As you know, Consumers Union is the independent nonprofit publisher of Consumer Reports and Consumer Reports Money Advisor. We work to empower consumers by informing and educating them about the top consumer issues of the day. And we also, as part of our work, report on scams and fraud, both to alert consumers and also advocate for public policy measures for greater protection. As I summarize in our testimony, over the last several years, we have seen numerous news reports and complaints received by regulators and law enforcement agencies indicating that consumers are experiencing significant problems in transactions related to gold coins and metal bullion. And we think that those problems are indeed worthy of attention by your subcommittee. Many of the problems that we have seen have come to public light are related to high-pressure sales tactics that entice consumers to buy coins that have high markups that turn out to have much less resale value than the consumer initially expected. Consumers are also at risk because sellers of gold coins and bullion may not be licensed or regulated either by the Securities and Exchange Commission or the Commodities Futures Trading Commission. And sales representatives may not be licensed as investment advisors, even though they present their products as an investment and may be perceived as, by the consumer as a financial advisor. So we are concerned that coin and bullion sellers are subject to relatively limited public oversights and that state consumer protection authorities may only be able to offer limited help for consumers who feel they have been defrauded. Through our publications, Consumers Union has urged consumers to be cautious in buying gold coins and to be particularly wary of high-pressure sales tactics over the phone. We emphatically agree with the Federal Trade Commission that this is an area where consumers need to do extensive homework before making a purchase decision. We generally advise consumers who are interested in investing in gold as a portion of their portfolio not to buy physical gold, but instead to purchase shares in an exchange-traded fund that purchases gold for clients and holds it in a bank because of the much lower trading fees and annual expenses. By contrast, companies selling gold coins may mark them up by significant margins of 20 to 30% or significantly more, such that it will take many months or years for consumers to even break even. We then summarize issues and concerns that have been raised about a number of companies in the marketplace. We have seen complaints on this issue over the years ebb and flow, but we believe that for a significant number of customers, there has been an ongoing problem for many years. And while the number of complaints, as was noted, may seem small as a portion of business transacted by the industry, it is generally accepted in most customer relations work that for each official complaint that is lodged with a company or government authorities, there are a significant number of other consumers who experienced similar problems but did not complain. And this is especially so in things like financial scams where the consumer or investor may be very embarrassed and they may hope that the situation will get better with the passage of time, and they may be very reluctant to talk about it. So we also believe that in the stories that have come to public light, we often see a significant financial loss experienced by the customer and bitter disappointment expressed by people who felt that there was significant upside to the investments, did not understand the structure of what they were putting their money down for. So we think there's a significant potential for misunderstandings about the value of the coins they are purchasing and the fees and services related to transactions. We're also concerned that the prospective purchase of gold coins and bullion may be an impulsive decision for some consumers who may be responding to well-placed TV or internet ads. As was noted this morning or earlier today, this does not excuse consumers for looking out for their economic interests, but it does raise the possibility that large numbers of customers in times of high gold prices and or economic distress may be enticed through slick advertisements to quickly agree to internet or telephone offers without carefully considering their options. And so for those customers, we think they need to be aware that there's a high cost to national television advertising, and companies that use that business model may use very aggressive sales practices to try to upgrade them to products that are more lucrative or remunerative for the sales advisor that's selling that product, that's earning a high commission. So with that in mind, we believe that the draft bill that's being considered here today would be very much in the public interest of consumers to have much more prominent, conspicuous disclosures in the sale of coins and precious metal bullion. These disclosures, in our opinion, should include the item's purchase price, melt valuable, and reasonable resale price, as well as any fees that the customer will incur if the purchase is completed. We strongly favor provisions to make those disclosures orally to consumers if the sales are being solicited by telephone, and to ensure that the FTC and the state attorneys general have appropriate authority to investigate deceptive practices. We believe that the people who are selling these products have a very good idea of what they're worth, and they have access to information through numerous trade groups and industry sources that regularly compute the value of these coins, and the person that generally may not have that information is the less experienced and less sophisticated consumer. So we think that we have an opportunity to craft a bill here that would be very much in the consumer and public interest. The stories we have seen do not inspire confidence that consumers are getting the information that they need, and we hope this bill will give them that information. And other organizations in the consumer protection community, such as the National Consumers League, we expect will strongly support this legislation. Thank you.
The chair thanks the witness, and now the chair recognizes Mr. Carter for 5 minutes for the purposes of an opening statement.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I'm Scott Carter, Executive Vice President of Goldline International. Thank you for this opportunity to discuss Goldline's role as an industry leader in the precious metals and rare coins markets. Goldline has long supported the comprehensive disclosure of information for an individual to make an informed decision about acquiring precious metals and rare coins. Indeed, Goldline believes its disclosures represent the best practices in an industry of more than 5,000 precious metals and rare coin dealers. These disclosures include clear examples and explanations of the risks and costs associated with acquiring precious metals, information which we provide throughout the sales process. In the highly competitive precious metals industry, there are numerous sources available to compare prices and policies. This intense competition, coupled with existing regulation, protects individuals when choosing if and where they acquire precious metals. We believe that H.R. 6149 does not improve the information currently required under existing regulations and imposes requirements that cannot be met by the industry. As presently written, the proposed legislation appears unworkable and may actually result in inaccurate information being conveyed to the consumer. Goldline has been offering precious metals to individuals since 1960 and has grown to more than 300 full-time employees. Over the years, Goldline has assisted thousands of people to acquire and liquidate precious metals and rare coins. We are proud to be rated A+ from the Better Business Bureau. Goldline provides each of our clients with a risk disclosure booklet, Coin Facts for investors and collectors to consider. Coin Facts is written in a large, easy-to-read font and contains important information regarding the acquisition of precious metals. In Coin Facts, Goldline explains its pricing policies in extensive detail and provides a mathematical example to ensure its clients understand how this pricing works. Goldline also provides important information about its sales staff and commission structure in Coin Facts. Also, even though spot gold prices have increased every year in the past 10 years, like any asset, precious metals can rise and fall in value. Accordingly, Coin Facts clearly spells out the risks of owning precious metals for a potential client. For example, we recommend that coins and bullion are appropriate for no more than 5 to 20% of a portfolio, and we believe that assets should be held for at least 3 to 5 years, preferably 5 to 10 years. Goldline's marketing and risk disclosure materials encourage prospective clients to conduct their due diligence before they acquire any product. Additionally, Goldline discloses its pricing, fees, and risks involved in acquiring precious metals and rare coins in its account and storage agreement, which all clients must read and sign before they finalize their purchases. The entire sales process, beginning with an individual's initial inquiry to Goldline and culminating with an expiration of the applicable cancellation and refund period, often occurs in a span of days or weeks. During this time, Goldline clients can easily conduct their own due diligence to compare products, prices, and policies among the thousands of competing precious metals dealers. In addition to providing comprehensive information to Goldline customers about the risks and costs of acquiring precious metals, Goldline has an internal compliance program to ensure best practices among its sales staff. This compliance program was reviewed by lawyers and former senior regulators with expertise in consumer protection, telemarketing, numismatics, and regulatory compliance. Goldline's policies are administered by a full-time compliance department with regular input and assistance from outside counsel. Among other things, Goldline's compliance program trains the sales staff about the requirements of the FTC's telemarketing sales rule, do not call obligations, state telemarketing requirements including seller identification and disclosures, and the importance of adhering to Goldline's compliance rules and code of conduct. Mr. Chairman, in my written testimony, I discuss our concerns about H.R. 6149 in greater detail. Today, I specifically would like to note that the requirement in the bill that sellers disclose the reasonable resale value of a product would create an insurmountable burden on precious metals dealers and likely would mislead consumers. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, thank you, and I would be happy to answer any questions from the committee.
The chair thanks the gentleman and now recognizes Dr. Beals for 5 minutes for the purposes of an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Howard Beals. I teach at the business school at George Washington University, and I have long experience at the FTC. I directed the Bureau of Consumer Protection from 2001 through 2004 when we created the National Do Not Call Registry, one of the most popular government consumer protection measures ever undertaken. Both inside and outside the agency, I've studied the FTC's approach to consumer protection issues for over 30 years. Thank you for asking me today to discuss these important issues. Although I have consulted with Goldline on issues relating to their marketing practices under the FTC Act, the views I express in this testimony are my own. The cornerstone of the FTC's consumer protection mission is its fraud program, through which the Commission has returned hundreds of millions of dollars to defrauded consumers. As the FTC has detailed, the agency has a long history of activity against deceptive investment claims. Common themes in these cases are false claims that high returns are virtually certain in a short period of time. The cases involving commodities also feature misrepresentations, usually expressed, of the relationship between the selling price and the market value of the item, combined with grossly inflated prices. Such claims are a far cry from Goldline's practices. Instead, Goldline's marketing and sales practices include extensive disclosures, encouraging consumers to carefully consider their purchases. First, Goldline's advertising relies on consumers calling the company to get additional information. Typically, customers call with initial questions and call back several times over a period of days before making a purchase. Thus, consumers have both time and the opportunity to check out competing sellers and other sources of information. The fact that a sale typically takes several calls suggests that consumers are exercising the kind of due consideration that should be given to a purchase that's typically in the range of $15,000 to $20,000 for first-time buyers. Goldline provides potential customers with a clear, well-written disclosure document, Coinfax, explaining the market and the company's practices in detail. In my experience, Goldline's pamphlet is a vast improvement over the disclosure documents that typically accompany other investment opportunities. In addition, all first-time buyers of Goldline's higher-margin products have an unconditional cancellation period of at least 7 days, providing significant time for any consumer to consider their potential purchase, compare prices and offerings, and access relevant information from readily available sources. Of course, even sophisticated consumers can be misled. Goldline, however, is very different from the type of company typically found engaging in deceptive investment promotions. A substantial fraction of its sales are repeat purchases, which only occurs when customers are satisfied with what they've received. Goldline also has an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau. Second, Goldline's advertising and sales material do not guarantee or promise a profit or a specific return. In contrast to the quick profit claims that are the hallmark of past cases, Goldmark advises consumers that rare coins and currencies should be held for at least 3 to 5 years, and preferably 5 to 10 years. Goldline makes no representation that it is selling at wholesale or at the lowest price. Instead, Goldline provides straightforward disclosures of its spreads. It also provides a very clear example of how this differential would affect a consumer's purchase of a coin from Goldline and how much that coin would have to increase in value for the consumer to earn a profit. Rather than illustrating a best-case scenario, The example is based on Goldline's maximum spread, where the necessary appreciation is greatest. Third, Goldline's advertising and sales practices are filled with sound cautions. It advises consumers to balance their portfolio and place no more than 5 to 20% in precious metals. In short, Goldline is the antithesis of the get-rich-quick seller making gross misrepresentations so common in past FTC cases. Under H.R. 6149, the bill would essentially require disclosures to reveal the seller's markup on the product. In other markets, we rely on competition to police seller markups. In retailing, for example, it's not disclosures of the market at full-service department stores that keep markups low. It's the competition from other department stores and other retailers, such as Walmart. What matters to consumers is the cost of the transaction, not the seller's markup. As long as information about prices at competing sellers is readily available to consumers who are interested, and it certainly is in the coin and precious metal market, there's no reason to disclose the seller's markup. Although providing consumers with more information almost always sounds appealing, it can in fact create consumer confusion. For example, the FTC's Bureau of Economics conducted an experimental study of the effect of disclosing the yield spread premium in mortgage transactions, which is essentially part of a broker's compensation. When the disclosure was included, consumers apparently focused on the disclosure rather than the overall cost of the transaction. As a result, they were less able to identify the low-cost mortgage. The reasonable resale value disclosure may create similar problems. Like the yield spread premium, it focuses consumers, or it risks focusing consumer attention on an aspect of the transaction that is not relevant to the overall cost. Confusion seems particularly likely when the resale value is disclosed along with the melt value. The melt value is simply irrelevant because it will always be reflected in the reasonable resale value of any product whose value is tied to spot prices. Moreover, in a market where prices change constantly, consumers may misunderstand what the reasonable resale value disclosure means. If consumers understand the disclosure as a claim that they can actually expect to resell the item at the disclosed price, they may be seriously misled. The risk of this misinterpretation is increased because consumers will almost inevitably assume that they're being provided with this information because it should be important in their decision. The Federal Trade Commission has an important role as a referee in policing the market economy. Like other products and services, the best protection remains the common law principles that the Commission enforces. Goldline's practices are entirely consistent with these principles. The proposed legislation is at best unnecessary, and it may in fact create consumer confusion. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify today, and I look forward to your questions.
The chair thanks the witnesses, and the chair recognizes himself now for 5 minutes for the purposes of questioning the witness. Ms. Grisman, the FCC has brought cases against companies that sold overpriced or misgraded historic coins for investment purposes. Do you concur with that? That the FCC has brought cases against companies that have sold overpriced or misgraded historic coins for investment purposes? Is that a fact?
That's correct. In fact, there have been 17 such cases dealing with what we allege to be fraud in connection with coins.
Right. Since 2005, the FCC has received approximately 850 complaints relating to coins and precious metals. In Mr. Carter's testimony, he stated that there have been relatively few complaints about gold lines submitted to the FTC or to the Better Business Bureau. Do you believe that the number of complaints received by the FTC or the Better Business Bureau accurately reflect the number of consumers who purchase coins or precious metals for investments who were misled or feel as though they were misled?
No, sir, I do not. I mean, as Mr. Bell pointed out, the percentage of consumers who complain, and we know this from consumer research that we've done, is a small percentage relative to those who may have suffered injury.
Yeah. New consumers who overpay for such investments sometimes not learn that they have overpaid until they try, sometimes years later, to sell their investments?
We have seen that.
And even then, there are some who might not realize that they have overpaid. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir. There are lots of reasons consumers may or may not choose to complain.
Can you think of any other reason that investors in coins or precious metals might not complain to the FTC or the Better Business Bureau?
There can be any number of reasons, Chairman. I mean, certainly consumers tend to complain most immediately to the company from which they purchased whatever good or service it was, and whether or not they seek out a Better Business Bureau or the Federal Trade Commission or a State Attorney General's office depends on many factors.
Yeah, Mr. Carter, when a customer complains directly to Goldline, alleging that the company made a misrepresentation about the product is sold, what are your steps that you take to resolve the matter? What are your guidelines?
Well, Mr. Chairman, we take every complaint seriously. As it was stated, 40% of our business is reorders. So it's very important for us to have a quality customer service process. The initial step we take is to assign the client that has a complaint to a special manager, a liaison, that's sole role is to take care of the client and resolve the issue. We review the account. We ensure that our processes with regard to disclosures and account agreements being signed and information has been taken care of, and all applicable processes have been done correctly by the company. In addition to that, we many times are working with the client to come to a solution that is amenable to them so that we can resolve the issue. And we do that with great care, and I'm proud to say that most of our complaints are resolved and most of our issues with regard to customers are handled effectively by the company.
The 40% that you mentioned, is that 40% of the total value or 40% of the customers?
No, what I'm saying is that our transactions, when you look at our number of repeat transactions in our customers, 40% of our current customers represent reorder sales. So not only have they bought the first time as an initial sale, but they actually reorder with the company. So it is very important for us to ensure that they're happy, that they understand their product, because they'll buy multiple times over multiple years.
My time is about up, but I have one final question. Do any of Goldline staff, sales staff hold, or have they ever held, to your knowledge, at one time a license to offer investment advice?
Congressman, our sales staff are not investment advisors. They may or may not have licenses in the past. We're not aware of that. It is not a requirement for the role that they play. They're not providing financial advice. And in our disclosures, we encourage the customer to seek out their financial advisor to get that information.
My time is concluded. The chair recognizes now Mr. Whitfield for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Ms. Greisman, how many consumer complaints were filed with the FTC against Goldline last year?
I don't have the precise number. It is not a large number. And as the chairman indicated, in total since 2005, the FTC has received roughly 850 complaints regarding precious metals and gold coins.
And do you know out of that how many relates to Goldline?
I don't know the precise number.
How many complaints were filed with the FTC totally last year?
As indicated in the testimony, the short answer is well over 1 million, I think 1.3 million. The percentage of complaints in this precise area is less than 1% of the total number of complaints received.
Now, with the authority that the FTC has today under the telemarketing sales rule or some other rule, have you all issued any judgment against Goldline or any enforcement mechanism or any other action against them?
Congressman, I'm not at liberty to disclose whether or not the FTC is or is not investigating any particular company.
Well, I'm not asking if you're investigating. I'm asking, have you rendered any decision against them or made any enforcement action against them?
The agency has not taken any action against Goldline.
Thank you. Thank you. see. Mr. Bell, can you tell us how many complaints the Consumers Union has received concerning Gold Line as a company?
Well, we're not a complaint handling organization, so our organization has not specifically received any to my knowledge. We do have a customer relations staff, but I don't believe that we've gotten any across the transom. But we are aware that there are enforcement actions that have been brought by the district attorney in Santa Monica against Gold Line and another company, Superior Gold Group. And so for us, I think we're a little more broadly concerned about what's happening across the entire marketplace. And for us, the 850 complaints received by the FTC about a number of companies is a relevant number.
Well, how does the volume of complaints for this industry compare to that, let's say, the diamond industry, fine arts, or antique industries?
I couldn't give you that information. I haven't researched the other industries. I would just say, based on my experience of working in consumer advocacy for 20 years, I see a number of danger signals here, just in the nature of the complaints that are being filed with authorities, in part because they echo concerns we've seen with many other types of sales practices over the telephone, where unsophisticated customers enter into transactions that they are later disappointed in, and in this case, they could be losing thousands or tens of thousands of dollars.
Dr. Beals, you state that the advertisements and disclosures that Gold Line makes that you have reviewed all appear to provide the consumer with the requisite information they need and comply with the law. Is there anything you would have them change or additional disclosures that you think they should make?
I think the disclosures in their advertising do a good job. What I think does an even better job is the coin facts pamphlet. That, as I said in my statement, is I think one of the clearest pieces of disclosure about the risks associated with investments that I've seen.
Mr. Carter, in my opening statement, I referred to a number of newspaper articles that indicate that some people think this hearing is being held because you advertise with conservative TV personalities, radio personalities like Glenn Beck and others, Huckabee, Fred Thompson, and others. Do you advertise with all sorts of networks, or do you just focus in on these conservative talk show hosts?
Well, Congressman, we advertise on a broad range of networks. At the present time, we advertise on 14 different TV networks, including CNN, CNBC, History International. One of our largest channels for leads is the Internet. We also advertise on radio. So we're a broad-based marketer, and we have broad-based advertising.
Someone earlier today referred to 3 of your current employees that had been either convicted or had been involved in some sort of fraudulent activity. What were they talking about?
We were made aware of that earlier this week by the press. These individuals, what I would say is that Gold Line conducts background checks in accordance with California's hiring practices law. These employees are in good standing at the company. The event that was referred to is over a decade old, was prior to Gold Line. But as of right now, these employees are in good standing, and they comply with our compliance policies that's at the company, and they went through our background check at point of hire.
Mm-hmm. And one other question, Ms. Greisman, has the FTC taken any formal position on this particular legislation? Yeah. So you've endorsed the legislation except for the reasonable resale issue and the exemption issue, those two? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The chair now recognizes the gentleman from New York, Mr. Weiner, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Carter, welcome. Do you recognize this document, the executive order of the President? All persons are required to deliver on or before May 1st, 1933, all gold coin, gold bullion, and gold certificates. Do you recognize this?
Yes.
Is this included in your packet of information that you send to your customers?
Yes, it is.
Can you tell us why?
Because customers, when determining what products they want to buy, consider many features and benefits. And one of those features and benefits that they consider is the prospect of confiscation. And this was an order that was, as we all know, that was completed in 1933. And in the marketplace today, these are uncertain economic times. The prospect of discussions in the marketplace of the gold standard are...
So there is a fear, if I can interrupt, so there is a fear that this may happen again.
There is one component that in uncertain economic times...
There's a fear that this might you might have this type of thing happen again.
Yes, I think
there's that fear. Now, can I ask you, do you include anywhere in the material that this was overturned the following year?
Congressman, I don't know.
The answer is you don't. Do you include anywhere in the material that the reason that that seizure took place had to do with the fact that then our currency was backed by dollars and it was an effort to stabilize our currency?
Yes, I understand that.
No, I'm saying that do you let your, you've already said that you agree that this is because some of your customers have a fear and that you reflect that fear in this document, but in a way that I think you'll agree is incomplete because it doesn't say it was repealed, doesn't put it in any kind of context. But let me ask you this. You then use this document in the pitching that your staff makes, and you freely stipulate in your documents here that your salespeople get a higher commission rate for selling semi-numismatic coins and numismatic coins than they do for bullion. Is that right? You freely say that in this document. Do you somehow make this argument because you believe in your heart, and I know that you're the host of a show called The American Advisor, do you believe there is any chance today that gold bullion would be seized by the government? Do you think it's a reasonable fear?
Yes, I do, Congressman.
Okay. Do you believe then that why would it not be a reasonable fear that they seize coins?
Well, the executive order as it was...
No, this is 1934. I'm talking about 2010. Do you think
in 2010, Congressman, our commissioned salespeople and our training is that if the executive order were reenacted as it was in 33, that coins with collector value were excluded from confiscation because their value... I understand. Just to summarize, Mr. Carter, you take something that was in 1933, that was repealed in 1934, and then you extrapolate what would happen, the fear that it could happen in 2010. You use language in your testimony and in gold facts, language like duration of investment, that you should diversify your portfolio. You took explanations about the collector value of coins. You even say, and I think in your testimony you recommend, I know you said it publicly, you recommend that people hold on to their things for 5 to 10 years. Sounds an awful lot like you're giving financial advice. Do you believe that you are? No, we don't. In fact, we instruct the clients that we are not financial advisors, that we point them to our disclosures and ask them to seek out financial advice.
But Mr. Carter, when you say you recommend that someone holds on to an investment for a purchase a certain duration time, how is that not investment advice?
It's disclosure advice, Congressman. It's to say that you should be prudent in the decisions you're making, that this should be a diversification strategy, that if you're buying a physical asset, something that you're buying today, and if your plan is to sell it tomorrow, that's speculation.
I understand, but Dr. Beals...
My point, Congressman.
Yeah.
The reason why when you buy a physical asset, whether you're buying a piece of property, anything, there are expenses and fees.
No, I understand. But Mr. Carter, let me interrupt because I have a limited amount of time. But Mr. Beals asked the question. He's a former consultant to your company, isn't he?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Beals asked the question, why is it different than any other commodity? Why you shop around for the best picture? You shop around for the best piece of furniture. The marketplace will decide. Here's the difference. Those things are not sold to people as investments. As in the language that you used the other day on Fox Business News, you referred to the government debt, the large deficits, inflation, the fear of confiscation. You referred to this again. It's quite a different thing than purchasing a television or a piece of furniture. These are the investments of middle-class Americans, like that witness that you saw sitting in that very same seat. That's why you have additional protections for these type of people. These are people that when you say in fleeting reference that you have a spread of 35%, that means that a citizen would have to make a 54% markup in order to get back to zero. And let me give you an example from today. Anyone in this room, anyone watching at home can look this up. This isn't me, it's not Mr. Carter saying. One of Goldline's popular products is the 1/4 ounce Proof American Eagle. They sell it today for $685, Mr. Chairman. You can get it from the Mint for $403, available to the public with a bulk discount of more than 100 coins. A competitor, AppMex, sells it for $425. You can get on eBay today for $445 because it's true, Mr. Carter, that there's not a lot of scarcity to a lot of these products. So this is a 38% spread, a 61% markup over your competitor, which means the moment that the gold arrives, someone has to make up 35% of the market. Let me explain what that means to Mr. Scalise. That would mean that gold would have to go from $1,293 today to $2,081 for that person to break even. When you're selling something as an investment, as a hedge against inflation, as a way to protect yourself in the future, what you're doing is like you did to that gentleman who came here right before you. You are buying them into the hole the minute they walk home. It simply is inexcusable. That's why Mr. Beals is incorrect to say that, oh, this is like any other consumer product. No, for middle-class Americans, those struggling to make it, who call up that number, who order these products, it's their savings. And as you know, you didn't limit it to a small percentage of that previous witness's savings. It was almost his entire savings, and that is why this legislation is needed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I ask for a second round if one's available.
The chair recognizes Mr. Scalise for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is it Greisman? You had testified earlier that the definition in the legislation before us of reasonable resale value could mislead consumers. Can you be more specific on that?
So, is it on? Our concern is that it might encourage unscrupulous marketers to collude and set prices. But we'd be more than happy to work with staff, and we have had discussions to find a different way to state the same goal.
Okay, thank you. So the bill as it's currently written could actually lead to collusion, which would actually be very detrimental to consumers as opposed to what we have now. Mr. Carter, how many competitors do you have in the marketplace? How many competitors are a rough estimate of people that sell gold?
It's estimated that there are 5,000 competitors in our marketplace.
5,000 competitors, okay. And obviously, if you had the ability to have collusion by having language like in the bill presented before us, according to the FTC, then that number may shrink dramatically, and consumers would be much more limited and possibly would be exposed to really bad deals. Let's equate, when we talk about savings and investments, let's say someone is buying stocks. They're not buying gold, but they're purchasing a stock. Clearly, you're going to have some people who are going to buy a stock and it's going to do well. You're going to have some people who buy a stock and it's going to lose money, and maybe if they hold it a little bit longer, then it would gain money. How many of your customers make money? How many lose money? I guess according to people we've been listening to, everybody loses money, but if you can kind of expand on that.
It's important that the whole period is maintained by a client. That's why we disclose it. I will give an example, Congressman. Our most popular coin, the Swiss 20 franc, which has our highest spread. If you bought that product from us 5 years ago, you have so far achieved a 90% return. If you bought that product from us 10 years ago, you've achieved a 240% return. Both of those numbers after our fees. So that has been a very positive return on that product as compared over the last decade with any stocks. The S&P is down, the Dow is down. We all know what's happened with real estate, and yet our product and our customers have seen a reasonable, some would say a very attractive return.
Okay, and so what you're saying was your most popular product that you sell has actually experienced a large rate of return, including if you back out the fees and the spread.
That's correct.
Okay. Let me ask Dr. Beals. You know, when we really talk about what the focus of this hearing is, and you know, again, I've expressed what I think about that. But when you talk about the Moody's warning, and Moody's is a very respected rating agency. This isn't somebody on talk radio or a TV show. Moody's is a very respected rating agency. They have warned that the United States' AAA bond rating under the current spending of this Congress is in jeopardy. Are you familiar with that? I want to first see. Are you familiar with what Moody's has warned about the actual credit worthiness of the United States of America?
Not in any detail, no. I'm sort of generally aware that it's there, but I'm not familiar with its details.
There are a lot of very respected agencies that have written about what that threat is, and that threat is not, it's surely not anything that any gold company has laid out there. It's not from somebody on a television show running around trying to scare people. It's from a rating agency, which I haven't heard anybody discredit, who actually analyzes the borrowing and spending practices of the United States of America. And the fact that you've got Moody's out there warning of a possible downgrade in the United States' debt rating, that's serious business. And it's real. It's not somebody running around talking about the sky falling. It's a rating agency saying if this country doesn't stop borrowing money we don't have, and if we don't stop spending money at the rapid pace that this Congress has been spending, that we're going to be in real trouble. Our children and our grandchildren are in jeopardy of losing the opportunities that we've all enjoyed. Our country's had a history of passing on a better opportunity to the next generation than the one before it. That's been the history of our country going back to George Washington. And that's in jeopardy right now. Not because you're selling gold, because the people running this Congress are spending too much money. They're spending money we don't have. They're taking over car companies and banks, and they're taking over health care. And in the meantime, the public out there is getting scared to death about all of this because they're saying, where's this going to end? And so they're going out and they're doing things like they're buying gold. You're not driving up the price of gold. It's going up on its own because people are concerned about the value of the dollar, not based on a talk show host, but based on real agencies like Moody's. Other countries are telling the United States of America to stop borrowing and spending money at this rapid pace because there are dire consequences to it. So I would hope that rather than Congress sitting up and beating up on people that are selling gold, they should actually go and look at why people are buying gold and why the United States' debt rating is in jeopardy according to Moody's. We've got to control the spending. We've got to actually stop borrowing money from countries like China and other places and create some jobs in this country. And if we do that, that'll solve these problems. But right now, instead of focusing on those problems, Congress is beating up on the people selling gold. Clearly, they're not listening. I yield back.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Sarbanes, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Carter had a question about the spread disclosure. So in the coin facts, I guess you described this spread issue and talk about, like, it can be as high as 30 to 35%, right?
Yes.
If in a particular case a salesperson knows that it could be more than that, does the salesperson have any responsibility to make that clear to the potential purchaser, or do they just leave the customer thinking that, and most customers are going to assume that that's sort of the top, the ceiling. Do they leave them to believe that that is what the spread might be, assuming even that, well, let me back up. Does the salesperson affirmatively bring the spread issue to the attention of the customer beyond handing them this disclosure form? Is that part of the training or compliance or other directives that the salespeople operate under?
There are multiple points in time when the disclosures of spread are covered, Congressman. And a point I want to make is that our maximum spread, the difference between our ask price and our bid price, is 35%. There is no higher spread that is variable. So point one is that the customer in our sales process has to contact us, and their first request to us is information that covers the coin facts that is mailed to them. That's the first point, easy font, easy to understand with an example of what the spread means. The second point, if the customer chooses to purchase a product, our account agreement, which we have examples of these if anybody would like a copy of. This account agreement covers the risk disclosures again. The customer has to sign this, verifying that they understand and have read the disclosures, including what we're just discussing before any sale is final. And then the last point I'll make, Congressman, is that we provide a 7-day full refund, no questions asked, buyer's remorse, talk to your spouse, we'll give you 100% of your money back if you change your mind. We feel like we have the best processes for disclosures and sales process in the industry to make sure the customer is informed.
Let me go back to my first question then. It sounds as though it's not necessarily the case that the salesperson affirmatively describes to the customer what the spread is. They give them the materials, and you've got a spread of 30 to 35% in there, which you claim is the most it can be. And then there's opportunities for them to sign saying they've read something. But in the sales pitch, in the discussion, the oral discussion that is had with the customer, it doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily the case that they are made aware of the spread issue, from what I'm understanding. The second question I had is, if the spread is going to be, well, whatever the spread is going to be in a particular case, is that information provided to the customer? I guess following on the first point, the answer to that must be no. So 30 to 35% is sort of the range that they can get off the paper, but they're not going to know specifically what the spread is going to be in their particular case, right?
No, sir. We cover in the sales process, in the time of the sale, the spread between the commissioned salesperson and the customer. And in addition, there's a sales confirmation process that's separate from the sales process, where we have a client service representative that covers the products that have been purchased, the total amount that you're paying, the fees associated with it to confirm the order.
Okay, so if there was a hard sell going on by one of your salespeople where that information wasn't being provided, that would be non-compliant with the policies that you claim you have in place, it sounds like.
Congressman, there are multiple places where we disclose the spread. As I said, it's not only the initial information that is mailed out to the customer, where they take a period of 7 to 10 days to read. There's also a confirmation of that at the sales process.
All right, I've run out of time. So real quick, let me just ask you this. You say 35% is the highest spread. We have information that it's higher, but just based on the first witness, who I think, if I recall, the investment was $143,000. At the sale point, which was 6 months later, at a point when it didn't appear that the value of gold had changed much at all. At the sale point, he got $80,000 back. The implication of that was that you had a loss of value. Now, you would attribute that to the numismatic markup and the spread, but that's 43. I mean, I did the math. That's 43% right there. So just in that particular case, it doesn't appear that the claim that the spread is limited to 30 to 35% applied, and that suggests there may be other situations that are similar to that.
If I could respond, Congressman, Dr. Bazin's testimony, the spread was 35% on the products that he purchased. The difference between our ask and our bid price. As it's been pointed out before, that is a markup of 54%. So we buy that product back. What was not provided in the testimony is that when we bought the proof American gold coins back from Dr. Bazin, we paid a price of over $2,080 an ounce. So when gold was trading at $1,100, Dr. Bazin received from Goldline double what the melt value of the coin was. And the reason why that is because these are coins that have a scarcity and demand and a collector value. So it's not, in this case, the melt value of the coin that drives the price, it's the market price. We paid twice the melt value to Dr. Bazin when he liquidated. So the difference between what he originally paid in his ask and the bid price is really our spread. And he held it much shorter despite our disclosures. He held it for a much shorter period of time and was not able to overcome that spread to earn a profit like other customers have held our other products and actually earned a profit. So we don't like to see any client disappointed, certainly not Dr. Bazin either, but he went directly against the disclosures. By the way, the disclosures
I
that
understand
he
he
signed,
sold it faster than you recommend. I understand that point, but I'm just talking about the markup appears, if that's equivalent to the spread, appears to be beyond what you indicated is the ceiling on that. I've run out of time. Thank you.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Terry, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just trying to get my mind around the issue here. If the FTC's here, there's inherently an accusation, and Mr. Weiner has been very clear with his accusation of fraud and deceptive practices and deceptive advertising. So I kind of want to get into that aspect of whether there's a real basis for this. And so typically, if you're providing accurate, truthful information to the consumer, you don't have fraud. It's when you're providing, as Mr. Weiner has said, lies. Fear and lies is what he says. If you're going to use that as a trade, or as the basis for turning someone in or designing legislation, you should probably add in the DCCC and some of their advertising. But we won't go there today. But I want to ask, this seems to be, I've got the book, Account and Storage Agreement. So Mr. Carter, is this what you provide your customers, like the doctor, sorry, I'm losing his name. What was his name? Bazin, Dr. Bazin. Is this what he received when, let me take a step further back. You don't do outbound to him. You didn't call him and try to sell him or pitch to buy gold. He contacted you, or a consumer contacts you.
Correct.
Correct. And then you send them the information, correct?
Yes.
What information do you send them?
We send them an investment kit. Dr. Bazin contacted us via the internet first. You're absolutely correct. We do not outbound calls. So he actually was searching for a product and originally contacted us by one of our internet advertisements. The time between he initially contacted us and actually made a purchase was 60 days. In that period of time, he was mailed the disclosure form.
I'm going to interrupt you because I just have a little bit of time.
Okay.
What did he receive then after he called and requested the information?
He received,
or generically, what does every consumer receive?
Every consumer receives the coin facts for risk disclosures, which is a complete coverage of our pricing, diversification, risk factors. This is for him to be prepared and to seek and understand what he's considering. He receives the account and storage agreement that he can read at his leisure and must be signed before a sale is final if he chooses to purchase.
Well, and I've just seen these documents today, but when we heard testimony earlier regarding the spread, I was handed this, and within about 3 minutes found the information on page 11, and it seems to be fairly clearly, unlike some of the bills we write here, clearly set forth and pretty easy to figure out that if you're going to sell it back, you're going to take a 35% loss on selling it back, or however you want to phrase it. Do you agree that that's clear?
Yes, I do. I think it's very clear in two forms, easily understandable with examples.
And in that regard, with the bill that Mr. Weiner has proposed and the disclosure requirements, with what you provide the consumers today, do you feel that your disclosures are below what he's asking for, exceed, or would already meet the requirements that were proposed in his bill?
As it's presently written, I believe the disclosures that we require exceed what the congressman is proposing. He is proposing different disclosures, but what we provide to the client, prospective client, from a disclosure standpoint is much more comprehensive than what the bill is stating, with the exception of the resale value that, as I said in my testimony, will be very difficult to determine with a competitor base of 5,000.
All right. I'm out of time. Thank you.
We'll conduct a second round of questioning for 2 minutes. We will allow each member an additional 2 minutes to question the witnesses, and the chair recognizes himself for 2 minutes. Mr. Carter, Dr. Bazin, you were present during his testimony, is that correct?
Yes.
And he presently sits right behind you now. So are you suggesting to him that he did something wrong in his transaction with Gold Line?
Mr. Chairman, I'm suggesting that having known the disclosures that we gave him and him acknowledging them through his sign-off, that if he were to need this money very quickly, as he did, he decided that he wanted to, according to our account notes, to invest in a different stock, which is 100% his choice. But having disregarded the disclosures of hold period and diversification, put him in a position where, because it was such a short period of time, that he would not recover the fees associated with the original purchase. And so in that regard, and when he called for liquidation, the person he spoke to informed him of that this is well short of our 3 to 5 year disclosure period, and advised him of that. But yet, in his quote, he had a hot stock he wanted to pursue. Perfectly fine, we all understand that. But it is directly in contrary to what we encouraged him to read and disclose and do, and as a result, unfortunately, he lost.
Now, Dr. Bazin, it seems to me a man of some wherewithal. I mean, he seems to be a man who is of sound mind and an accomplished individual. Are you telling me then that you have given your agent or your member of your organization advised him that if he divested of his purchase, that he would lose approximately $60,000 at that moment, and then in spite of that, he went on and divested of his purchase?
We didn't advise him. What we said is that this is in contrast to a 3 to 5 year hold period before he liquidated, to make sure that was a decision.
And that he would stand to lose $60,000 if he did not accept your scenario. You won't call it advice, but
yes, Mr. Chairman, the liquidation process would tell him the amount of money that he was going to receive. That's why they call the amount of money he would receive if he were to liquidate.
And so are you suggesting now? Are you telling this subcommittee that Dr. Bazin is totally at fault in this situation? He's totally at fault for losing $60,000 of his own money?
I'm saying, yes, I'm saying Dr. Bazin did not adhere to the compliance and the disclosure requirements that we provide.
Recognizes the ranking member, Mr. Whitfield, for 2 minutes.
Well, thank you again, and once again, I want to thank all the witnesses for being here and the members for joining us as we explore this issue. Rather than a question, I guess I've just kind of summarized this in my mind, but the FTC has never, as far as we know, never initiated any enforcement action against Gold Line. or tried to institute any fine or civil penalty against Gold Line. I know Mr. Weiner talked about you were giving financial advice, and maybe it could be interpreted that way. But when you do read the account and storage agreement, paragraph 7 says that client understands that Gold Line believes coins and bullions are appropriate for 5 to 20% of a portfolio, although certain individuals or organizations might recommend a different percentage. Client will independently determine what percentage is appropriate for him or her based upon their individual circumstances. Now, I would agree that buying gold is not like buying a television or buying any normal consumer product. But I would say that gold is similar in some ways because of trying to determine value of land, of futures, diamonds, silver, fine art, rubies, emeralds, all of those things. And it would seem to me that if this is a major problem, that maybe this legislation should include other things, not just gold. But I look forward to working with the chairman and Mr. Weiner, who introduced the legislation, and others. I know that the FTC has already said that they do have problems with the legislation because of the definition of reasonable resale value, as well as some exemption issues. But I don't think you can. You've been in business 50 years. Gold Line been in business 50 years. Is that correct, Mr. Carter?
Yes, we have.
Okay. So this is a company that's been in business for 50 years, and 40% of its business is repeat customers. So I cannot imagine that this is widespread, but I may be wrong. But thank you all for your testimony, and I look forward to working with you.
The chair recognizes Mr. Weiner for 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bazano, the previous witness, he didn't lose all that money because of what he did. He lost all that money because you overcharged him. You took a $140,000 investment and gave him $85,000 when he tried to turn it back to you. That's it. That's what happened. If he would have bought $140,000 and someone else gave him $120,000 back, they got a better deal there, didn't they? Of course. That's what happened here. The idea he didn't follow our prescription to wait 5 to 10 years. Well, I ask you, Mr. Chairman, what if the market went down in that time? Does anything happen 15? Then 20? The whole point is what Mr. Scalise inadvertently said. He said the same thing happens in the stock market. You buy a stock, it goes up, it goes down. Yes. We protect people. We make sure that there's transparency. We make sure that everyone understands what they're buying. One person buys a stock, another person buys a stock. It's the same thing. You charge for a product much, much more for someone else. You brag about how much the return was. And by the way, you're very good at this. Brag about how much the return was if you bought the Swiss franc. You didn't point out that that 200% increase corresponds to a 319% increase in that same period of time in the gold market. It's a bad investment. It's not whether or not you think gold goes up and down, Mr. Scalise. Maybe it will. I don't know. But I tell you one thing for sure. If you're holding a lot of Swiss francs when the market collapsed, good luck buying a loaf of bread with that. Good luck. Maybe your neighborhood store will take your Swiss franc. The only value it has at that point is whether or not you can sell it for more dollars than you bought it. That's the only measure. That's it. That's an investment. I know you're an investment advisor. You might want to write this down. This isn't, it's in my booklet that if you hold it 5 to 10 years, maybe it'll get better. No, 5 to 10 years in a market, right? If it goes down, it's going to take more than that, won't it, Mr. Carter? If gold goes down, it takes more than that, won't it?
Certainly, like any.
Of course. So it could be 50. Then are you going to have a witness who comes here who lost his life savings, some middle-class guy? Oh, it's his fault because he didn't wait 30 years. This is not whether or not consumers are idiots. It's whether or not they're being lied to and exploited by your company. And I would say this, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate Mr. Whitfield's offer, is that there's some responsibility that we have not to exploit people in this moment of fear by making it worse. There's some responsibility. There's some responsibility to be honest with them. When you're dealing with their life savings, 50 years and complaints and non-disclosure agreements you make people sign, the fundamental question is this, is should you be doing this? Should you be exploiting people this way? Should you be taking advantage of the fear and anxiety that they have? Should you be implying to people that a confiscation order is in place that hasn't been in place since my father was born? That's just wrong. And what we should try to do, Mr. Chairman, is we should endeavor to give people the tools to do it. And I say to my good friend, yeah, it's in here. We're going to rip you off. That doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it right when we know by comparing. You can go to my website and look at the comparison. There are places that aren't doing it or not doing it as much. And this is in the seam, I would say, by way of conclusion, Mr. Whitfield, because this, I think, is where we can try to find some common ground. This is in the seam. It's kind of an investment, but it's kind of a commodity. I think we do need to structure things a little bit differently. To a lot of people, to the witness, to a lot of Americans that buy your product, it's being treated as an investment. You go on the business stations to talk about it. You use words like divestment strategy in terms of, it's treating it like an investment. You don't hedge the inflation by buying a TV. And for that reason, I say we need to find this way, and one thing is clear, is if you look at the District Attorney of Santa Monica, the FTC, the Attorney General of Missouri, the Better Business Bureau, we need to get this under control. And I appreciate you shedding some light on it, and to all the members of the panel and to you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Terry, recognized for 2 minutes.
Unanimous consent for 4 minutes to have the same amount of time as Mr. Weiner.
Mr. Terry is recognized for 2 minutes, and whatever amount of time you want to.
I appreciate that,
have it,
Mr.
okay.
Chairman. So I would agree with Mr. Weiner in part and disagree. One is, it's not a good investment. It's not something I would do. As a matter of fact, when I was in college, a friend of mine thought that gold would be a great investment. We went to a shop. They wanted 20% on top of the sale. I said, I'm not going to do that. I made up my own mind. But to call what's in here a lie is wrong. I mean, it's clearly set forth in here. So the issue is in the interpretation of the consumer. They get to decide whether that's a good investment or not. So I would ask the gentlelady from the FTC, have you had a finding on the advertising from this company that they have lied to consumers? Because you get to decide that, because that would be right under your jurisdiction. Have you found that?
Congressman, as I mentioned earlier, there is no FTC action against Goldline.
All right. So is there any actions pending about whether or not they've lied?
I cannot indicate whether or not the company may or may not be under investigation.
How many, I'm switching gears on you here a little bit, but how many complaints have there been against all of the, was it 500? I'm sorry, Mr. Carter, 500 or 5,000?
5,000.
5,000 companies selling gold.
Over the past 5 years, the FTC has received roughly 850 complaints involving coins and precious metals investments.
Right.
It's a small number, but again, that is not dispositive as to whether or not there may be problems.
True. I would agree with that statement. How many against Goldline?
I don't recall the specific number, sir.
Do you know how many against ITM? Have you heard of them?
I do not know the answer.
Okay. I'm just, so all of the complaints totality is what again?
Over the past 5 years, roughly 850.
And out of the 850, have there been any actions against those companies for fraudulent advertising?
I can't answer that question because I can't answer it directly. I can say, as I said earlier, the FTC has not sued any company recently involving misrepresentations in connection with precious metals or coins.
Okay. So the issue here is, before this committee, is whether it's a good investment or not. And I'm not sure that's wise for this committee to make that decision. But I do think it's the obligation of the business to fully disclose all of the costs in here, in that transaction, as well as if you're going to buy it back from the consumer. And frankly, I think that information is laid out in pretty plain language. So at that point in time, I'll yield back.
The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Sarbanes, for 2 minutes.
Mr. Carter, you said that you feel that the disclosure that you all provide to the customers. It is, yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
The disclosure that you provide is pretty good disclosure, correct, in your view?
Yes.
And in fact, I think you said to Congressman Weiner or somebody that the disclosure you have even goes beyond some of the requirements that are laid out in the legislation as you read it. Is that correct?
We disclose more than is specific identified in the legislation, although the legislation does identify things that we currently don't disclose that we would challenge and have issue with.
Is your disclosure better or worse than most of, in your judgment, than most of the other companies that are in the industry in which you operate?
Well, as I said, there are 5,000. We believe that we have best practices in the industry and full disclosure with our eye on the prospective client. I haven't done an exhaustive research on what our competitors are disclosing. I want to make sure that our disclosures are fair and that the prospective client is making a good choice.
You don't have any sense of whether you think you're sort of at the top of the class when it comes to the disclosure you do, or
I believe
middle?
Yes, I do, Congressman. I believe we are at the top of the class.
Okay. And I presume that you strive for disclosure because you feel like that's a good thing for your customer.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes.
So one would hope that you'd feel the same way about the customers of these other companies that operate these offerings, right?
Absolutely, Congressman. And what I said in my testimony is that we are for disclosure. That is not our issue with this bill. The issue with this bill is the definitions of what is excluded and the type of disclosure about resale value in aggregating 5,000 competitors is just not workable for any competitors, including ourselves. So we absolutely support disclosure. It's just this current legislation, the type of disclosure that is requesting is not capable and would ultimately harm the customer because of the information that's provided.
Well, I get the feeling that you're generally supportive of what Congressman Weiner is trying to do, and I expect there's going to be some further development on this legislation. He's put the pieces together that I think make a lot of sense, and you certainly are someone who promote good, strong disclosure, which is what's at the heart of this bill. So I'm sure he looks forward to having your support going forward, and I yield back.
With that, the chair would declare to the subcommittee members and to the witnesses that the record for this hearing will remain open for 14 days so that any member of the committee might want to ask questions of the witnesses in writing, and that the witnesses will be asked to respond as quickly as possible, promptly to the questions in writing from members of the committee. And the record will remain open for an additional 14 days. With that said, the committee now stands adjourned. I want to again thank the witnesses.
Thank you all
for your investment of your time in this particular matter. Thank you, and may you return home with Godspeed. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The committee stands adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Rush. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Whitfield.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. appreciate you doing this.
You just left this here. Do you want it?
Yeah.
Just get out.
Out the camera's way.